The sun is sinking in an open scar. The moon is melting in a milky mould. The burn is bursting with petals of gold. The snow owl gazes at the evening star.
This is Writer's Mosaic in Conversation. Bashabi Fraser talks to the poet Tariq Latif about how he keeps the dirty business of politics out of his poetry.
Tariq, you were born in Lahore in Pakistan and spent your childhood there before your family moved with you to Britain. You refer to your childhood in your first poetry collection, Skimming the Soul. Would you say your childhood experience in the Punjab molded your outlook on life and society? Would you like to tell us something of the experience of those early days in Pakistan and how they have shaped you as a writer today?
I was born in a very small rural village just outside of Lahore. And the lovely thing about it was we had no electricity, we had no gas, we had no running water. So everything was very natural. Sometimes pictures are portrayed of these remote villages, which are houses made out of mud with flat roofs and so on. So the whole living that I experienced at that very early age was very organic in every sense of the word. It was actually a very beautiful and privileged lifestyle, to be quite honest, because I had the benefit of both the rural life, which is my grandparents, and on my father's side, my grandfather lived in Lahore, so I had the benefit of a bustling city, as well as the very quiet and serene lifestyle of the village upbringing as well. So it was very informative because it just gave you an entirely different outlook on life. As you probably know from a psychological point of view, the early years of your life more or less set up the patterns for the rest of your life. It was absolutely lovely to be brought up in an environment where you saw things growing in fields and literally living off the land, and then going into the city where you experience something completely different. It was just culturally very, very enriching. And yes, you're quite right. A lot of it is in my first book.
Your grandmother's influence on you?
Oh yes, very much so. She was very, very strongly religious. Is phenomenally religious. She had absolute faith in God, in Allah, and inevitably, having brought up in such an environment, you just have that faith. No matter what life throws at you, you just completely and absolutely believe in God. And the fact that they were very independent and lived by their own hard work and so on, that was very informative. And in the early days, set the pattern really of what you would expect in life. You've just got to work through life to get what you want.
I first met you, Tariq, in 1997, where you appeared with four other poets at the International Book Festival, and you had contributed to a special issue of Lines,
Yeah.
which featured South Asian poets writing in Scotland. And since then, I have followed your work with interest. When did you know that you were a poet?
Well, believe it or not, it was actually at a very early age. We moved to do A levels. There were about five of us who were very good at English, but decided on a practical point of view that we would do the sciences. And the head of the English department, Mr. Alan Johnson, at the time was very disappointed that none of us took English. So what he decided to do was set up a writing group just for us scientists, as it were. And it was actually a poetry writing group. So we started to write poems at an early age. And he took us, along with other people from the school, to hear Ted Hughes read, which is, at the age of 17, a very influential experience, because he was and still is a phenomenal poet. And so at an early age of 17, I knew I wanted to write poetry. Poetry seems to me much more interesting because you have to be much more concise, a lot more. It's like distilling a novel into a handful of poems. I mean, I have actually written a novel That did get published, but it did get taken up by an agent, but unfortunately it didn't get taken up by any publishing house. That in itself was a different experience. It's slightly more freer because you're not constrained by the demands that poetry makes on you.
Tariq, you write about when you first came to Britain, how your family settled down, a migrant's experience. And could you tell us how the difference in culture, the one that you came from and the one that you encountered here, entered your poetry?
That's a very interesting question. Given it some thought. So, from a cultural point of view, the early years, you had this integration of family values and expectations and so on. And the stark cultural difference within the UK was you were more or less expected to be independent and do your own thing and go your own way, as it were. I mean, the Margaret Thatcher days of get on your bike and find a job for yourself and look after your own and so on didn't do very much for society, but it influences us in some ways because we just knew we were going to be up against it, being an ethnic minority, as it were. We just took it for granted that we would be discriminated against when we applied for particular jobs. And that was really an uphill struggle. It's been a difficult experience, to be quite honest, but something that we just have to not so much as accept, but challenge it when we can. So, for example, the work experience that I have, somebody did in fact make a racially offensive comment, which I wasn't very happy about. So I did challenge it, and the person actually got sacked for it. You know, we kind of take the best out of both worlds, but you hope for the best for everything, to be quite honest. So in terms of the writing, I try and really bring out the qualities of both cultures in a positive light rather than something negative, because something negative doesn't always bring out the best in people, let's be honest. Whereas when you speak about the two cultures in a rich, beautiful way, it's then appreciated.
Because you have hope in humanity, don't you?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we don't have that, then it's a very sad day, a very dark day.
So you write powerfully about difference, Tariq, of
Mm.
religion, cuisine, a way of life. So I just wondered if you could read a poem that exemplifies this at this point.
I would love to do that actually. It's the title of my third book, The Punjabi Weddings. Now, the reason why I wrote this particular poem was in answer to Philip Larkin's The Whitsun Weddings. As it transpired, he had a bit of a racist view on minorities, ethnic minorities, which I was quite shocked by because I really did like his poems. And his poem, The Whitsun Weddings, talks about weddings as he's doing this train journey from Hull to London. So I wanted to counteract that and write in the same format and style that he'd written Whitsun Weddings and call it The Punjabi Weddings. And it's my privilege to read that to you now. The
Yes.
Punjabi Weddings. The cars parked outside the reception hall range from recent models of BMW to Vauxhall. Inside, the marriage rites of the decent groom and bride take place in separate rooms. The bride is adorned in crimson and gold sari. A dupatta hides her face. Surrounded by women, she thinks the groom's quarters will be less animated, bland, with dull suits and quieter. The men's pace is leisurely. They chat and sip coke, while the Molby tells the newly extended family folk in both fluent English and Punjabi that marriage is sacred and not to be taken lightly. He then utters the vows in Arabic, which the groom repeats word for musical word. Allah be praised, he declares, and shakes the groom's hand. The groom bows, the men clap, the groom's dad waits to be heard, and then he invites family and friends to wish the groom well, and the whole business drags and then ends with the groom leading the men from the room to a large dining hall. Basmati rice from the Punjab is served at weddings in Glasgow, Manchester, Birmingham, Gravesend, while the adults eat the food rich with spice as children run around tables in Berlin, Paris, Rome, speaking Punjabi that sends hope to the future generations, and the time has come for the newly wedded to leave the band of well-wishers and take the long road home. The relatives and friends and the in-laws cleared the tables and binned the leftovers, half-eaten chicken pieces, rice, curry sauce, a feast for the night creatures with jaws that will tug at bones. The secret lovers, fearful of being found, leave in a hurry. No one speaks of the indelible stains of dishonor. Instead, the family goes on to great pains to track them down, to pretend the flower of their lives never existed. The grooms and brides take off their clothes and work out how to live out their new lives. Their mothers and fathers sink into chairs and talk of the homeland. They hope their grandchildren arrive on cue. The girls work the soap that shrinks and lathers. So in that, I actually opened it up a lot more than Philip Larkin did, because he just spoke about the weddings from Hull to London, whereas I decided to make it not just national but international.
So
Thank
could
you.
you tell us of certain contemporary events that have inspired the muse in you and led you to write about them?
It's no longer contemporary, but at the time it was. I was not very happy with what ISIS were doing in the name of Allah. It was absolutely disgraceful, and that really what they were doing had absolutely nothing to do with the values of Islam and God and so on. That they were basically committing murder, and it was outrageous. Um, so I did in fact write the poem called Isis, but it's a metaphor. It's spelled ISCES, so it's like the adjective of ice, something freezing over. And I developed this metaphor throughout the poem, which actually I will read later as part of the series of poems I've done especially for this commission. But that really did inspire me to write that, because I was so angry with what had happened. So what I wanted to do in that poem was just take it from the father's point of view, who loses his son to ISIS, uh, because for something like that to happen must be absolutely appalling. Obviously, ISIS do not represent Muslims in general. Muslims overall are decent human beings, and I wanted to represent that angle from the father's point of view, who loses his son. And I think that's what I try and do in this poem. I generally try and avoid politics, just because I don't have time for politics, just because it's a dirty business, to be quite honest. But every now and then something does happen where I will write about it. For example, another instance, I was in Orkney, and at the time, I was observing this beautiful scene of the sea and the seagulls and so on. And on the news, they'd reported about the Japanese prime minister had gone to part of Nagasaki, I think it was, just to remember the people who had been killed in that terrible bombing. And that actually became an integral part of my poem, just because of the coincidence of my being in a beautiful place. And where I was, actually, there was a memorial for soldiers. It's called the Kishner Memorial, and it basically marks the death of soldiers who died in the sea, which I was looking at. They basically had drowned. There were 600 who had died, and they were going to put 600 bricks with each of the name of the sailors on the monument, as it were. And then I was thinking, no one's going to remember the thousands of people who had been killed. No one's going to put up a memorial for them. And that really became as part of that poem. But as I say, generally I try and avoid politics, just because I think it's very dirty business, to be quite honest. But international themes do enter every now and then, just because there's the human cost, which is very seldom spoken about. And that was really my interest in it.
You have a sensitive vision, which is conveyed in your poetry. And I just wondered if you would like to read a short poem for us.
It's from my childhood, actually. It's a beautiful, lovely scene. I'll just read it because it describes itself. So just imagine yourself being in one of the villages. In the houses are set in such that there's a big courtyard, and then the houses are around. Sorry, the bedrooms and kitchens are around the courtyard. So this is set in the courtyard, and it's called At Night. Every now and again, a knot cracks and the burning sticks fall a little. The old women and men go on talking about who is to marry whom and who has died and who has left. Their tobacco-rich voices mingle with the world news on the radio. The children curled up by the fire are lulled to sleep by the deep voices. Around the farmers in the immense dark, there are the sleepy cotton fields, luminous cotton plants that look like stars in the endless expanse of the Milky Way. Fireflies wander among them like brief comets, or souls dissolving just beyond ourselves.
Again, I find your poetry quite visual, Tariq, and I know that nature has played a crucial part. You live in Dune now. How has the world of nature shaped your poetry?
Very much so. The reason being, it actually, in a strange way, connected me back to my childhood. Basically, I'd lived in Manchester for over 30 years, and when you live in a suburban area, you do tend to get disconnected from the natural world. I mean, every now and then I would go for walks along the Pennine Way, but that was just brief outings. Whereas having moved to Dunoon, literally as I drive to work, within 2 minutes I'm looking at a little loch, and I'm looking at woodland. I'm looking at making sure I don't hit any deer that cross the road. So I'm literally surrounded by nature. So having lived here now for over 20 years, what it's done is it's reconnected me to the whole sense of movement of seasons and the change of seasons. It's just got me reconnected to the environment in a way that I'd quite forgotten. And I think I had that on a subliminal level as a child. You kind of observe things, but not necessarily register them on an intellectual level. You were there more of an emotive level. And I think that reconnection has been a wonderful experience having lived out here. I mean, it's a different landscape compared to the Punjab. The Punjab is predominantly flat, whereas around here there's lots of hills, but there are lots of small little farms. You know, you see sheep in the fields and you see cattle and so on. And it's actually lovely to see. It's something I've never observed as a child, but when a newborn lamb is introduced into the world, their ears are pink. I'd never noticed that before. And the light shines through their ears. You think, oh my God, that is so beautiful. So, one of the things I did do in terms of writing poetry was that I started to send myself texts. So, what I would do is I would look at a particular scene in the same way as a Japanese artist would do, and they would just observe, and then very quickly in a few brushstrokes I would do a painting. Whereas what I did was very quickly I sent myself a couple of texts, and then I composed a whole sequence of poem based on that. I called it Argyle Symphonia just because it was the music of Argyle and the natural scene. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read just a few sections from that. It's just to sort of exemplify. It's almost like a jazz piece insofar as you can dip in and out of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to exemplify that by reading it out of sequence and just certain precise observations. So it's called Argyle Symphonia. Morning mist ascends the giant cathedrals of the conifers. Birds in the low wintry light decipher the musical notes left by last night's rain and begin to sing new psalms. A tired farmer faces the morning star. A vexen in the woods licks her warm scar. Bees in the meadows make liquid gold. Seagulls fight over bread covered in mould. The sun is sinking in an open scar. The moon is melting in a milky mould. The burn is bursting with petals of gold. The snow owl gazes at the evening star. So the clever thing with that particular one is I repeat the same four words, but in a different way. So there's the morning and then there's the evening, and they kind of reflect on each other.
It's beautiful.
Thank
Is there
you.
more that you'd like to read?
Just two more sections, and then
Yes, please.
I'll let you carry on with the interview. Patches of burnt golden grass are crude crusts of light. Patches of burning golden light nourish crusty seeds of grass. The mist swirling across the sway of sea of conifers looks like torn sails of long ships lost in the raging forests of the sea. The fox slumps off the stump and creeps into the coppery fern, daubing the dead leaves with wild berries of blood.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I mean, you really have a mastery over form and style, and the images are sharp. Tariq, you have 4 collections. What are you working on now?
I actually do have a full collection in place, and I'm thinking of calling it actually either The Price of Emigration or Migrants. I haven't decided yet. It's just probably going to be determined by who decides to publish it. It's been in the making for the last 10 years. So I'm looking at the moment to try and place it with a publisher. Again, it's a lot to do with living in Scotland and the beautiful landscape, but also embodies poems like Isis. I mean, there's one poem, I think it's actually in Smithereens actually, which talks about the Queen's Jubilee, but the new collection is really a lot to do with the fact that people have such a thing about immigration and immigrants at the moment, as if this is something terribly wrong, but they never seem to look at the root causes of it and why that's going on. And I think I really want to talk about that in the new collection. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Thank you very much. I think we will look out for The Price of Emigration or Migration or Migrant. I think you will have exploded the myth of the creation of the other through your poetry. Tariq, thank you very much for being with us today. It's been a joy to talk to you and most enriching for me.
Thank you very much as well. I'm very grateful to you.
Bashabi Fraser was talking to the poet Tariq Latif. To hear more writers, go to writersmosaic.org.uk.